You know, a lot of people talk about walking with God. What does it really mean to walk with God? Yesterday, I walked into work, and when I got there, people are coming up to me, with wide eyes. And, the boss is here, the manager, the owner's here, and they have this fear. And me myself, I'm sitting there like, so what? The only reason I really felt like that is because I always do the same thing. I always come in and work the same way. I always come in and work at the same speed. I always do the same thing. I always stay to the same amount of time because my boss is always watching. My owner is always there. But I thought this would be a good example of what it means to actually walk with God. Say your owner would want to walk through and do a walk through the building. I think if you're walking with him, you would be very humble. You see people, whenever the manager or the boss comes around, they start being nice to everybody, and they're serving everybody, they're helping people, they're keeping their area clean, they're respectful, and they're humble. And this is how they act when the boss comes around. So if you're walking with your boss, you'd be very humble around him. You'd be nice to people you probably usually aren't nice to. You'd have a different respect for your environment, for the things, because the owner owns this place, so you're gonna make sure that you're keeping things clean, you're taking care of things, you're being very respectful because he owns this stuff and that he can let you go at any time. Well, this is very similar to what it would be like to walk with God. If you're really aware, because honestly, whether you know it or not, God is always watching. And if you're truly walking with God, this is the same type of attitude you're gonna have. Humility. When John had a vision of heaven, or whether he was there or not, he saw Jesus and he felt like he was dead at his feet. When Moses approached the burning bush, he had to take his shoes off because it was holy ground. Anybody that has an encounter with God, it's an humbling experience. And this is what we should know about walking with God. To walk with God means to be very humble, and it's not something that's easy. We hear about Enoch walking with God, and this is why he was taken straight to heaven. So it had to be a very rare thing. He had to have a very rare amount of humility. It's the same thing they said about Moses. Moses was a very humble man. He thought very low of himself. And Jesus himself came to serve, to be servants. This is what it means to walk with God. If you saw a theophany of God and he came right by you, you wouldn't act the way you do. I know I wouldn't either. Although I try to stay aware of him consciously, I always slip up, and I always have to fall on my knees and ask for forgiveness for some kind of sin every day, every morning, whether it's in my thoughts or in my words or in my deeds, or just the apathy or just the sluggishness. We never truly walk with God consistently. In Luke 18, we hear about the Pharisee and the tax collector. The Pharisee, he's the one that thought he could approach God so boldly. He's all up on the altar talking about how much he fasted and how much he prayed and how much money he gave away. And this is what a lot of people believe it's like to walk with God. They believe it's all about fasting. It's all about these physical things. It's all about their prayer life. It's all about how much they give. And while these things are important, nothing is more important than a contrite heart, than repentance, than a lowly view of yourself and a high view of God. Nothing matches with that. He exalts and gives grace to the humble, and he rejects the prideful people. So no matter what deeds you do, how many times you pray a day, no matter how many times you fast, that's not what walking with God is. Walking with God is having an understanding of his holiness and his presence, and letting that be a humbling thing that causes you to serve other people. Think lower of yourself and think higher of God. This is what it means to walk with God. Something to think about.